And so, it begins. Dark were the skies, and chill was the wind, as the land was covered in a veil of malice. Across the hill did ride a dread army of the night, cloaked in mist and fog, prepared to rain down death and destruction upon the land. And the people did crowd for a savior, a noble soul to save them from their impending demise. Just as it seemed all was lost, in strode a mighty hero, clad in shimmering metal from head to toe. Wielding a terrible broadsword, he did cleave his foes in two, smashing their ranks asunder with righteous fury. And when the day was done and the enemy strewn across the fields in pieces, the people did turn to the warrior and say, "We shall name this day in your honor. Speak unto us your wisdom." The warrior said one word that day: epic.
One man, one murloc, one giant angry badger. This is Blue Please. It begins now. Yes, indeed, folks. Welcome to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. The date today is the 7th of August, 2009. It is 8 p.m. BST. It is 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In other times, it's other places. In other places, probably other times as well. One way or the other, we don't really care. It's Blue Please on WoW Radio, and we have a show for you today. Yes, we do. What are we going to be talking about? Well, I can tell you, it's quite a skill, really. Something you acquire over the years, as you will find if you ever get into podcasting. You acquire the ability to tell people in advance what exactly you're going to be talking about on the show. Now, of course, that involves actually preparing the show, as opposed to simply waffling on about nothing at all. Maybe having a bit of a show structure, writing down some notes, something like that. I don't know, it sounds a bit too old media for me. Oh, with the new media, we can throw all the rules out the window and just, hey, I'll tell you what I'll do. Being new media and having absolutely no respect for old media, the principles of good radio. I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes and do this. Yeah. How about I don't do that? How about we do a proper show, eh? Seriously, I tell you, this silliness that I see on the internet these days from blinking new media types, I swear, people make me sick sometimes. So, let me tell you a little bit of a story. So, I was browsing around buff.net, as I generally do, encouraging people to buff the stories they like. Because that's what you're supposed to do. You log onto the site, you find a story you like, you buff it, or if it's not there, you submit it, and other people buff it. So, it's a really good resource. Been getting a lot of really good news articles from there lately, particularly, actually, since I'm someone who's not into blogs. I've been reading a lot more WoW blogs as a direct result of buff.net, because of course the good stories get on the front page, so I can go and read them. That's really handy. I like that. So I've read a number of things. But I've also discovered there's a couple of other WoW podcasts. Now, my disdain for most WoW podcasts is well documented. And some people, of course, would mistake that for some kind of crazy elitism, or maybe I'm jealous of these podcasts that get like 250 listeners as opposed to my 50,000. I don't know. Maybe I'm just backwards like that. But no. What it comes down to is the fact that me being a radio host, I do internet radio, and I have done terrestrial radio and hope to do terrestrial radio again in the future. My chosen career path. So, when I hear it's like, we're doing a podcast, it's a horrible word to begin with. It makes your skin crawl. And as much as I love Mr. Leo Laporte, his idea of netcast wasn't much better. Why can't we just call it a show? That's what it is. I know why we can't call it a show, because show has all these horrible connotations to it. Like, you gotta do work, and you gotta get a good mic, and you gotta get a structure and do your research. It's too hard. That's why we don't call it a show, we call it a podcast. Because, hey, there's no strings attached to podcast. All podcast is shove it on iTunes. It doesn't matter what's on it. Just some guy in front of a microphone waffling for half an hour with no music bed, a bunch of noise in the background, ums and ahs, and half a pound of halfpenny rice every 5 seconds. No, we don't have to do anything for a podcast. It's new media. It's a nice blank page. There's no rules. And I don't like that. Because, to me, it's pulling down my chosen art form, yeah? And to most people, they know me as someone who does a podcast. But podcast, as a result of these idiots, has a negative connotation. Podcast, it doesn't equate with radio show. Radio show has a certain prestige. You have a certain expectation of what you're going to hear on a radio show. But when you hear on a podcast, well, just listen to your average podcast. Just go on. Pick a random podcast. I'm not talking about the ones that are all the way at the top, the really good quality ones. Just go on, let's say, new and notable in video games. Pick a random podcast, listen to it, and guarantee you, 90% of the time, it's going to be some guy in front of a mic waffling on for no apparent reason whatsoever. You know, this whole stream of consciousness verbal diarrhea rubbish just doesn't work. And WoW podcasts are no exception. A bunch of WoW podcasts aren't very good. And that's the problem, because they don't adhere to all these principles. And you might think that I'm elitist. You might think that I'm arrogant. Yeah, you know what? I'm a bit arrogant. You know why I'm a bit arrogant? Because I've got, like, all of this freaking experience. And these great staff backing me up. And a pretty decent website. Good systems. Loads of years of experience, decent equipment. Yeah, of course I'm a little bit arrogant. Why wouldn't I be? In the country of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. For God's sake, compare any host on this station to your average podcaster. The difference is huge. It's horrendous. Anyway, the story that I was getting to. So, there's this random podcast. I'm not going to mention names. I see no need to. You'll be able to find it on buff.net. It's just awful. I'm sorry, we had like one guy on this podcast who was raiding while they did a show. I mean, what the hell are you playing at? Raiding while you do a show, like clicking away and shouting and everything? It's like, how the hell can you possibly focus on delivering good content if you're going to be playing games while you do your show? Are you kidding? Yes, the temptation for me has come along to play games while doing the show. Hey, I've got various games to play this weekend, but you know what? I'm not going to do that because my concern is putting out a decent show. Is that such a bad thing? No, it isn't. Of course it's not. Why would it be? Anyway, just something I had to get off my chest, and I'm sure you'll see much, much more of this foolishness as things go along. I'm proud to not only be a member of WoW Radio, but have so many great hosts with me to give you great shows. That's all we're here for. That's why we're here. That's why we're going to BlizzCon. To give you all of these wonderful things that other organizations and even DirecTV are not going to be able to provide for you. So we think you're great. We like our audience very much. And hopefully you like what we do too. So yeah, just a bit of an aside. Now, if you want to get involved in the IRC channel and you are listening live, which you certainly should be, this show airs live every Friday at 8 PM BST, that's 3 PM Eastern, on our website, wcradio.com. The IRC channel is irc.mmlirc.com # WOW Radio. Alternatively, you can click the chat button at the top of the screen on wcradio.com. Sounds like a solid idea to me. I think it's a plan that could very well be implemented. Now, the question is, what is coming up on the show today? Well, I can tell you. So, we're going to talk a little bit about Blizzard's history of 180s a little bit later on in the show. As in, when they've had a policy or a design philosophy or something that's basically been set in stone, it's like, we believe this because of this. And then later on, actually, we don't believe that anymore, and we're doing a complete flip on it. You'd be surprised how many times it's actually happened, because there has been a recent one, and you'll find out about that a little bit later on in the show. Also, the most ridiculous thing I've heard on the forums in a very long time. Apparently, according to some genius on the general WoW forums, Ulduar has no progressive difficulty curve whatsoever. No, I kid you not. This guy thinks that every boss in Ulduar is exactly the same difficulty. We talk about bizarre perceptions and how time seems to rot the brain of the raider these days. We'll also be analysing whether or not Ulduar was well structured in terms of a progression and difficulty curve. See if it's maybe a model for the future. Compare it to some of the other instances in the past and see what's going on. Also, a little bit interactivity today. Your thoughts on 3.2. We'll do an entire section later on in the show. Give you the chance to email themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com. Your thoughts on patch 3.2, any aspect of it, I don't care, positive, negative. I'll pick the best ones as the show goes along. I'll read them, I'll discuss them, and it'll all be great. So yeah, it's kind of like an extended mailbag. And I suppose that may sound like a cop-out to some people, but you'd be surprised how much people really love having their mail read and having their mail discussed. Now, I'm going to be honest, I haven't played patch 3.2. And you know exactly why. The reason I haven't played patch 3.2 is that I'm totally burned out on 25-man raiding, and my interest is getting back into the game and forming a small 10-man guild. Yeah? And that's going to involve certain people who are going to have to faction transfer. So if the faction transfer system isn't up, then hey, not an awful lot I can do about that. So yeah, you can expect me back in the game shortly. We'll see what happens. But by the sounds of it, I'm not really missing all that much. Maybe you can tell me. Email themurloc@gmail.com. Now, before I do the mailbag for this week, and we're rapidly running out of time in this first particular introductory segment, as we like to call it, I was going to do an entire section on this, but I decided not to, and the reason is that I wouldn't want to be doing an entire section on something which could potentially be false. However, I would like to touch upon it. Now, an article was posted earlier this week on stratfood.com with a screenshot, supposedly from a forum member of Exodus's hacked account. Somebody hacked one of the forum members of Exodus and posted a screenshot of a nefarious plan. Now, again, I'm going to disclaim this by saying this is possibly photoshopped. It may or may not be true, and we'll see whether or not it happens. Indeed, I would hope that if it is true, perhaps that the guild in question, that of course being Exodus, yes, we know Exodus from such movies as We Hacked, cried about it, and got banned, and then claimed that we were the best. Actually, that was actually the only movie we know them from. Yes, they shot to fame on the basis of them being terrible cheaters. Well done! Congratulations. So, this post read along the lines of, guys, this is what we're going to do. We are going to clear the content on this server, then we are going to go to another server. We're going to transfer the entire raiding core to another server, and we're going to get the Death's Demise title, yeah, which is the Realm First Yogg-Saron 1+0. Now, amusingly enough, they haven't managed to actually kill Yogg-Saron 1+0 yet, and 14 other guilds, according to Guild Progress, have got ahead of them, so evidently it seems they spent a little too much time posting American flags on their front page, and not enough time actually learning the fight. Shame for them. So, I would assume, because of the cheating and the ban, that they can no longer get the Realm First. Indeed, the Realm First may have already been triggered, and it might not be possible to reset it. So Ysondra, the realm that they are on, I assume they can't get the Realm First there. So, they're going to go to some other unsuspecting server, get the Realm First there, and then transfer back. All of this within the course of 3 days. Now, why? Why can they do that? I'll tell you why they can do that, because Blizzard made a really stupid mistake. It's like, yes, let's reduce the transfer cooldown to 3 days. 3 days? Are you serious? Oh, and here's the best part. You know what? Transferring off the server resets your raid cooldowns. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. You can do the same raid twice in 1 week if you transfer your raiding core. Now, of course, most people would think, well, no one is sad, pathetic, and completely Spurgeon enough to do this. Absolutely not. We didn't count on Exodus, did we? No, we didn't factor that into the equation. This is the guild that was willing to do something so mind-bogglingly dumb. Yes, I actually said it. I went that far. That's probably the first time I've ever used that word on the air, but God, it makes my blood boil. So mind-bogglingly dumb. And thinking they could possibly get away with it in exploiting Yogg+0. You've gotta be kidding. Absolutely not. That guild was stupid enough, so they're stupid enough to do anything, right? Including spending 1.2 grand. Yes, $1,250 to transfer their entire raiding core from one server to another, then transfer them back 3 days later. Are you out of your minds? And some people might view this, well, oh, it's not cheating. It's exactly the same as... Would it be exactly the same as? Well, it's exactly the same as the old thing with the AQ-40. Yeah. The whole black mount thing. I can't remember the damn name of it. It had a title associated with it, and you got a black Karaji war mount. And that was a once per realm thing. And yes, guilds did transfer to realms where it wasn't open and take that. Did I view that as a good thing? No. I didn't view that as a good thing either. But to be honest, I find this to be even worse. Absolutely disgraceful. And some people may argue that, it's not cheating, blah, blah, blah. So, well, did you support the whole moving over to get the bug mount? I certainly hope not. And even then, by that point, by the time this was actually happening, it was getting a little bit, out of date. This was happening all the way through TBC, for instance. It was out of date. Some people were transferring to do that. But Death's Demise, the Realm First Yogg plus 0, that's very current. That's an achievement that every realm deserves to earn legitimately. And not have some idiots transfer over, grab it, and then make a run for it. At the moment, from what I can see, let's see, so we've got 15 guilds that have done this, right? And are they all on different servers? McTheridan, Lightning's Blade, Senjin, Sylvanas, Aquin, Silvermoon, Mugthil, Najatar, Turulin, Kil'jaeden, some Russian thing, Mal'Ganis, Korgath, Alterac Mountains, and Blood Furnace. Yes, all different servers, but imagine what would happen a little bit later on, when some guy from those servers says, we couldn't get the title on our server, so let's go and steal it from another server. You might not call that cheating per se, but I'll tell you this, as far as I'm concerned, cheating is a circumvention of the usual rules with the view of actually creating foul play. Doing something that is unsportsmanlike, and getting something that they do not legitimately deserve. It's like, you lost your chance, Exodus, because you cheated, and that makes you terrible. In every possible respect. I don't care how good a guild you were in the first place. I don't care that you're world 17th. Wow, world 17th, so impressive. I don't care, because you're cheaters. So who cares what you have to say? At all. As far as I'm concerned, they should be stopped from doing this, and the decision to get a 3-day transfer is absolutely stupid. A fool and his money are soon parted. You're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. No, we don't have time for the mailbag. I don't care. It's fine. You know what? You can wait until later. I'm going to play a little bit of a Louveté. It's Grey Sublime Archon. I'll be right back after this to tell you a little bit about Blizzard's history of 180s. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Please. Music was removed due to copyright concerns. If you'd like to hear the music, tune in live on Fridays at 8 p.m. British Standard Time. That is 3 p.m. EST on WCRadio.com. You are tuned into Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. Now, let me just disclaim this entire show and every show that's ever gone before it. It's nice to get misconceptions out of the way, because it's funny, a lot of people seem to listen to podcasts for news, right? And I suppose I can understand that, because it's quite convenient. So say you're driving around and you're on your commute, or you're on the bus, or you're on the train, or even on the plane, or whatever, and you want to hear the news and you want to get the WoW info. Well, podcasts are a good way to do that. For instance, the podcast, and indeed the show that's coming up after mine, is WoW Things Considered with Dunco and Cadwallian. Very much a news-based show. They talk a lot about blue posts, a bit of punditry there, quite a lot of news, always a good thing. This show is not about news. Right? Never has been. Never has been. It's like, if you're familiar with US-based talk radio, then you know exactly what this show is about. If you're familiar with the right-wing commentators on US radio, I'm not going to pass a judgment on, because we know people get upset about that. Dear Lord. If you're familiar with them, they don't do the news. They do punditry. They do commentary. You want news, you say you go to the BBC. You want punditry, you want commentary, you want ranting, you want soapboxing, you want cynicism, you'll get it here in spades. Yes, indeed. And if that's not the kind of thing that you want, then I would recommend you check out our other fine programs on WCRadio.com. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Epic!
Yeah, right. Now, before I go on, allow me to promote something, because that's always a good thing. So, we decided to put together a shirt design for BlizzCon, and it's not really a BlizzCon shirt per se, in that we're not saying, hey, you should all go buy these and wear them at BlizzCon, because BlizzCon's just a few short weeks away now, and it might be a little bit too late for you. However, you never know. It is possible that you might be able to get one, especially if you're living in the US, because the shipping times are quite short. So, we came up with a design. It was specifically Fatty, the lass who won our WoW Idol 2009 contest. She came up with a design based on Three Wolf Moon. If you've seen anything on Three Wolf Moon, you'll know exactly what it is. It's a shirt with a moon on it and three wolves howling at it. And it got all these crazy reviews on Amazon. So, it became an overnight internet craze. We have created, in fact,
not one, but two Jawmanga worms.
In fact, it's called not one, but two Jawmanga Moon. And it's an awesome design. And we're going to be putting it up on our Cafe Press store. You'll be able to get it on basically every possible shirt you can imagine, and every possible size you can imagine, as well as various other merchandise, like steins, mugs, posters, that kind of thing. We're just perfecting the design now, because we want to make sure it's absolutely fantastic quality, and you'll be able to buy that hopefully over the weekend. So go check out our website. We'll put up a front page post once it's available, and you'll also be able to check it out on our Twitter feeds and our Cafe Press store, which is cafepress.com/wearcraft. So yeah, it would be cool to see a few of those over at the BlizzCon. And if you do get the opportunity, you should also go over to elitistjerks.com, because they have a great t-shirt. It's an In the Mountains Elitist Jerks t-shirt in the style of the classic Obama promotional poster. It's very, very good. You should check that one out as well. Very good for the discerning WoW player's wardrobe. Now that we've got the shilling and the corporate stuff out of the way, and the promoting and the endorsing and the TotalBiscuit here, and the secret is in the t-shirt, it is time to get on with some content. Now, 180s, U-turns, complete reversals of policy. You would be surprised how many times Blizzard has actually been guilty of this. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about something that's happened recently. Yes, here's the tiny nugget of news that you will get amongst the swirling lava pit of my own personal opinion. Blizzard have allowed you to now create a character on both sides of a PvP server. Now, previously this was not allowed. You could do it on a PvE server, but you couldn't do it on a PvP server. Now, there was, of course, rationale for this, as you would imagine. Basically, every decision in WoW, every design decision, everything that is there in WoW is there for a reason, however minor that reason may be. Now, from the very start of World of Warcraft, all up until, like, yesterday or whatever, you've not been able to create a Alliance and Horde character on a PvP server. Now, the rationale is twofold. One of these rationales is relevant. One of these rationales is not so relevant. Now, the not so relevant one, that is out of date, is the idea that you could use a ult on the other side to spy on enemy plans and movements. You know, when they first released the game, when World PvP was at large, and I imagine they were thinking about trying to make World PvP a bigger thing until they just gave up and made Battlegrounds instead, the idea that you'd be able to spy on the other faction's movements would kind of matter. For instance, if anyone actually bothered to defend the city bosses, then knowing exactly what was happening on the other side of a PvP server would be rather helpful. Plus the ability, of course, to sabotage what was going on through misinformation or whatever. Now, it's not a massive deal. It wasn't even from the start, because, of course, all you would need is someone on Ventrilo who happens to be on the other faction, so it wouldn't really make a difference if you could roll or not. But that was a small initial reason. There are games where it matters a little bit more. Like, for instance, I don't know if you can do it in Warhammer on the PvP servers, the R vs R servers. I don't know, but I know you cannot do that on Planet Side. Planet Side has a cooldown when you log on to another faction, which means you can't switch back for like another 10 hours or whatever. So you can't keep switching back and forwards to check on enemy plans. So that was the outdated reason. But the major reason, which still endures to this very day, is quite simply this. WoW is populated by petulant, angry, nerd-raging Spurgeon children. Yeah? Whether they be 12 years old, or 24, or 36, or 48. So many man-children all over the place. A lot of very nerd-ragey people. A lot of people that don't really have the best of social skills. A lot of people that just can't keep their anger in check. Which means, of course, that the natural result of ganking on a PvP server would be, if you have the opportunity to do so, logging an ult on the other faction and sending a stream of expletives and horrendous drivel in the direction of the person who just ganked you. Now, that makes sense. It makes sense to have the separation there between the two factions in order for that to happen. And indeed, it is the same reason, of course, why we cannot yell and cannot say to other factions. We have different languages to stop us from doing that. That's the whole point. However, it has been demonstrated that people will go to some very extreme lengths in order to get their messages of hate, their messages of insults, nerd rage, flaming, trolling the other faction through. And you've seen it before, I would imagine, on your server. The idea that certain combinations of letters and numbers can result in sending certain messages over the yell channel. Because you can hear the other faction's yells if you're in the same zone, but of course it's in the wrong language. But that hasn't stopped people, no. Some people have come up with the translations which actually cause the language system to output something that's readable to the other faction. Yes, they will go that far. So tell me exactly. Just ponder on this one. Cogitate it for a little while. Let's hear the cogs whir and the steam flow out of your eardrums. Why exactly Blizzard thought this would be a good idea? Are you serious? I'm sorry, but you're putting way too much trust in your community here. Have you not learned? Maybe it's just because their GMs are bored. Maybe that's it. Maybe there just aren't enough calls for the GMs anymore. Don't worry, they'll increase threefold after this change, because all you're going to be getting is reports of this guy logged onto his alt on the other faction and started calling my mama a whatever. That's what you're going to get. Tons and tons of this. Like 3 times as many bannings. Let me see the suspensions for sending defamatory or inflammatory language to another player go up by like 5 bazillion%. See it happen over the next week. I can guarantee it. Oh, the GMs will be working overtime to deal with the fact that the player base of WoW can't keep their emotions in check. Ah, good lord. Why is this a good idea? Now, here's the thing. This is not the first time that Blizzard has done a bizarre 180. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to try and conclude why exactly they're doing all these silly things. I mean, I could come to a very easy conclusion right now, but now we'll see. Now, one of the first 180s that I can remember, it wasn't the first one, of course, but it was one of the first that I could remember. That was PvE to PvP transfers. Now, when the PCT, the public character transfer, or indeed the paid character transfer, whichever you prefer, take your acronyms however you like, I don't care. Peas, carrots, and tomatoes. When the peas, carrots, and tomatoes system was implemented into World of Warcraft, they specifically said, you cannot transfer from a PvE to a PvP server. The rationale given was simply this. It is easier to level up on a PvE server than it is to level up on a PvP server. Therefore, we are not going to allow people to level up to max level on a PvE server where it is easier and quicker and then transfer to a PvP server and get the full benefits. It's like, you cannot have your cake and eat it. If you want to be involved in the greater freedom of a PvP server, then you've got to accept that you are going to level up and you are most likely going to get ganked/killed. Now, they 180'd on this, and they 180'd for this specific reason. This is the rationale here. They never gave a specific reason. Yeah. They were just saying, oh, well, we wanted other people to be able to play with their friends. But here's the actual rationale. Besides the, oh, we want to make some more money off of PCTs, which is, of course, a valid reason for a company trying to squeeze as much money out of its player base as humanly possible. And we know that, they've been doing that quite a bit lately. The rationale is simply this. The world PvP environment in which the ganking and the craziness was going on simply does not exist anymore. There are far less gankers, there are far less people populating the zones. It is less dangerous now, to the point where it is arguable, it is debatable, it could be argued, that leveling up on a PvE server is really not all that much easier than leveling up on a PvP server, to the point where there's just so little difference that the rationale now fails to hold water anymore. Would I agree with that? Yeah, Actually, I would, because World PvP's been dead for a very, very long time. I remember the days when, yes, PvP server leveling was hard, and you know what, we relished it. But times have changed. Leveling has got much more boring. Times have changed, and that's how it goes on. So I will give them that. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is another 180 that they did with Wrath of the Lich King. Now, in TBC, they had a badge system, and you're well aware of how the badge system in that works. And there were issues, particularly with the giving out of excessively powerful items for doing instances which were not good enough to justify them. Yeah, they weren't hard enough, they weren't difficulty enough. So it balked up the progression path. Now, with Wrath, they came out with this tiered badge system, and their specific thing that they actually said, paraphrasing here of course, is that we do not want a repeat of the TBC badge debacle. So, of course, the tiered badge system was brought in, and everyone was happy, because the badge system served a good practical purpose. It allowed you to fill in gaps, it allowed you to compensate somewhat for unlucky dice rolls. And that was fine. That was good. I was alright with that. Until, of course, we got to patch 3.2, which we're conveniently now in, whereby they decided to 180 on that. And the justification was, we want more people to see the content. So what we're going to do is we're going to vastly overpower people. Right. There are, of course, other pieces of rationale. We've covered this in great detail, so I'm not going to go too far into it. I mean, we did an entire show on this, for God's sake. The other pieces of rationale, which were mostly player-created, these were not officially stated, is that players were finding it difficult to enter the raid game, and also finding it difficult to get heroics. So, of course, giving a higher tier of badges for running heroics would put people back in heroic dungeons again. Yeah, that's a reasonable piece of rationale. Doesn't mean that it's not ridiculous and cheap, and that they should have thought of other good ways of doing it. By any stretch. That is a 180 that I just see as a cheap cop-out. It's like, we can't design a proper progression path that will actually teach people properly, nor do we understand the principles behind allowing players to go back to older content and actually giving them a good reason to do so that does not involve overpowering people that don't deserve it. And they should look at other games for that. It's ridiculous. What other ones have we got? Well, we had the quick one. Cross-realm battlegrounds are technically impossible. Quote from Gungdil, a former German community manager. Well, we can see why he's a former community manager then. Achievements are important for the progression path. Until we say otherwise. Okay, well, I've never really liked achievements anyway, and campaigned against them, that's fine. And of course, the other one would be 2v2 is an important part of the arena experience. Until we realise that our silly balancing has not worked. Thereby, we're just gonna, disqualify 2v2 as a valid form of arena progression. Conclusion. 180s. 180s are invariably gonna happen at some point. But what concerns me more than anything is that WoW is now a very old game, yeah? In relative terms, it's about 5 years old. Which means that the original guys, a lot of them aren't working on it anymore, and that's a problem, because sometimes you get the new guys come in, they have a different vision for the game, and they take the game in the wrong direction, and they forget the wisdom of their forefathers. And the wisdom of their forefathers is what made such a classic MMORPG to begin with. Forget that, and oh, you are in trouble. You really are. Forget those principles. You are in the shiz, as it were. You break what made the game good in the first place. My name is TotalBiscuit, you're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio. I've got some music for you, and I'll be back after the break to tell you about the amazing Flat Ulduar. Yes, quite. Enjoy. Gee, finding decent WoW news on the internet sure is hard work. So many sites to look at, and I don't even know which ones are accurate. Oh, if only there was someone who could help me.
Buff! Did somebody call for help?
Gee whiz, it's Buff the News Fairy!
It sure is, kid. You have summoned me here, and I shall grant you one wish.
Wow, that sure is swell. But what should I wish for? A new bicycle!
The wish must be related to World of Warcraft news.
Even better! I wish for a magical site where all WoW news is collected into one place. I wish for a site where users could submit cool WoW stuff they found on the internet, and other users could buff it if they liked it. I wish for a one-stop shop where I could find the news that I want and filter it down to the things that I'm interested in. I want a place where the community can come together and make a better world for us all.
Granted! Behold the wonders of buffed.net. That's BUFFD.net. Because these are for sissies.
Yay! Thank you, Buff the News Fairy. You have saved Azeroth.
Think nothing of it, kid. And remember, if it ain't buffed, it ain't worth knowing.
Yes, indeed, folks, you listen to Blue Please. You're on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. Now, I've got a little bit of a mission for you before I go on to the next little discussion topic. I have a line graph for this one. It's really good. I'm very professional for this one. It's like a presentation to the corporate board. I want you to head on over to buff.net, because buff.net is going to succeed or fail based entirely on whether or not the community is actually, buffing things. If you've ever used dig.com, you know exactly what buff.net's about. Yeah? There's stories on the front page, there's stories on the upcoming tales, you can submit your own stories, and if you like it, you buff it. So, the best stories get the most popular stuff. And again, like I was saying earlier in the show, I've had the opportunity to read some blogs that I otherwise would not have read as a result of looking at this site. So I want you to all go over there right now, every last one of you. Go on, type it in. You're listening to the show on the podcast, you listen to it live. Go on, buffd.net. Go do it. It'll only take you 5 seconds of your time. Have a look. Have a look on the front page. See if there's anything that interests you. Maybe there's something in upcoming, and I want you to go buff something. Just one thing. Find something you like and buff it. Because you know what? You might actually get an awful lot out of this site. I'm finding the ability to find news stories a heck of a lot easier as a direct result of this. Now, I don't have to go on some terrible AOL-owned site whose name shall not be uttered on this show. Indeed, because if you mention it, it makes glass crack like this. It's horrendous, and you end up having to clean it up. It's a health and safety hazard. They who shall not be named. Anyway, let's get on with this. I read the forums. I don't know why. One of these days I'll figure out why it is that I do it. I got myself banned again, by the way. This is like the 20th time. So if any of the CM team are listening, hi! Sorry, again. Actually, no, I'm not going to apologise for this one. You want the ban reason? I'll give you the ban reason. You guys are always entertained by this kind of thing. And if you're not, well, you are not one of my fans. Oh, no. Right. Let me log into my forum account. And I shall give you the ban reason. Because personally, I found this the most hilarious eggshell walking rubbish. Come on, forums. You know you want to. There we go. Temporary ban until the 18th of August 2009. Posting harassing and defamatory language towards others. Quote, targeting another individual to cause distress, embarrassment, unwanted attention, or other personal discomfort, i.e. harassment. And the quote is this. Now, the thread was by a guy who said, why is Ogrimmar locked for my DK? And posts this terribly spelled gibberish. Basically, he didn't finish the Wrathgate quest, and this is a obvious thing to anyone. You can search the internet, just search, why is Org locked, and you'll find it on Google, the first entry. Search the forums, you'll find it. Search the new player stuff. And indeed, if you understand how the quests work, because you read the quest text, then you'd be okay. So he posts, why is it locked? So I post, read the frigging quest text and stop asking stupid questions, maybe. That's assuming you're talking about what I think you're talking about, and I can't be sure, because you're about as descriptive as a crayon drawing of a printed circuit board. That got me a 3-week ban. Wow. I'm sorry, I'm not dealing with toddlers here. I can't go into a playground, make a scary monster face, and suddenly all the kids scream and start crying. It doesn't work that way. I'm dealing with people who are at least, I would imagine, old enough to get a subscription to a game on the internet, which requires you to pay a monthly fee. Now, if that's paid for by their parents, that ain't my problem. I'm not going to tippy-toe around people's feelings just because the guy on the other end might be 5 years old. Not my problem. I shouldn't have to deal with that rubbish. So yeah, if you're listening, CM team, Come on, really? That was the best you could come up with? I actually had a great email from Thungott, but of course I'm not going to read that on air. But he made some valid points, but I still think he's a soft touch. Good lord. Seriously. Be a little bit more harsh with the idiots on your forums. You'll have a better forum to moderate. It won't be full of repeat threads and idiotic questions. How I recruit friend? When is player housing? How I free TBC? Oh, my eyes are bleeding out of my face. They're trying to escape the stupidity. I suppose the ban is a nice temporary reprieve. Now, speaking of stupidity, this is what I saw on the forums. This was in an interesting topic that I was reading. Now, this is something I discussed with our new host, Natural20, over dinner. He does Just Plain Better on Mondays. You should listen. He was in Newcastle, so we had lunch, and we talked about various things, and he was actually in the debating contest. And he was talking to me about how debates work, and I was sharing my knowledge as well, because I've done a bit of it in law, and of course we get taught about the burden of proof in law. Now, how this relates to this thread is some guy posted, Wrath of the Lich... His proposition is this: Wrath of the Lich King is the hardest ever. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but the content of his post I did agree with. And what he did was he provided a bunch of statistics. Now, we discussed these statistics weeks ago, when I did an analysis of the number of people that have beaten each boss in Old War. Yeah? So this is a nice follow-up to that. And his analysis concluded that, yes, Wrath of the Lich King raid content was hard, and by hard we're talking about Old War, of course. We're not really talking about Nax here. We're talking about Malagos, Sarth 3D, indeed, even Sarth 1D, and Old War content. That was all hard, apparently. And he backed that up by presenting these statistics. And he rationalized each statistic, and to me, that's a reasonable opener, yeah? That he's satisfied the burden of proof, the initial burden of proof, by providing a good, solid piece of factual analysis of a set of statistics. Thereby, it is up for everyone else, of course, to disprove it. Could they? No. No, they could not. They came up with the most bizarre rationalizations. You know, what I like, the best one was, the only reason, yeah, this came from the same guy, as I'm about to talk to you about. And a couple of people actually backed him up on this. The only reason that Yogg-Saron has only been killed by 5% of the raiding guild population is that 95% of the raiding guild population doesn't have time. Really? And of course, my counter-argument to this was quite simple. Okay then, if you're claiming that, in fact, Wrath of the Lich King raid content, beyond Nax, we're not talking about difficulty here, we're just talking about time, then would you mind explaining to me exactly how only 19% of the raiding player base has done Malagos 25? A 10-minute fight with no trash? You want to explain that? Go on, try. Please, by all means, entertain me. Yeah, it was rubbish. Now, the same guy made this bizarre claim. Absolutely bizarre claim. And the claim was this: Old War, with the exception of Flame Leviathan and Yogg-Saron, yeah, so I'll be fair, I'll give him his due, without Flame Leviathan, as in without the easiest and the hardest boss, of course, without counting Algernon or any of the hard mods whatsoever, is a flat difficulty curve. As in, there is no increase whatsoever, or variation in difficulty, from Razor Scale to General Vezax. Not one. And don't think that I'm manipulating what he's saying here. No, this is actually what he said. And anyone that was reading this thread will attest to that. That he actually claimed that it was a flat difficulty level. And the mind boggled. I mean, I've been raiding for a very long time. I've done pretty much everything except for Sunwell. Because, hey, I quit before Sunwell even came out. I went on a hiatus for like 9 months before Wrath's release. So I've seen how Blizzard designs their raid instances. There are two kinds of raid instance, yeah? There's the Naxxramas style of raid instance, which is a non-linear winged instance. And what that means is that you can do it in a nondescript order. Thereby, the difficulty level of it is not going to be a uphill slope. You're going to have maybe a couple of initial easy bosses, but that's not necessarily the case. I mean, for instance, you look at the Abomination Wing. Patchwork. I'm maybe talking about old Patchwork, not new Patchwork here. But I suppose it really applies to new Patchwork to some degree as well. Patchwork is easier than Globulus. Arguably. No, actually that's not true at all. Let's get it the right way around, shall we? You see how much I hate remembering Nax? You see how much it rotted my brain? Maybe say stupid things. Ugh. News just in, folks. Hogger more difficult than Kel'Thuzad, more 11. So, Globulus, less difficult than Patchwork. Arguably Gluff, less difficult than Patchwork. Then Thaddeus, more difficult than Patchwork. So, you don't have a curve there. You've got difficulty here, then down, then slightly up, but not as difficult as Patchwork, then whee, all the way up to Thaddeus. So yeah, that's a winged design. So the difficulty is going to vary. It's going to be all over the damn shop. And then you have a linear design. And the linear design, we're talking about stuff like Blackwing Lair, we're talking about stuff like AQ40, we're talking about stuff like Ulduar, we're talking about stuff like Mount Hyjal. All relatively linear instances. That where you'll do bosses in a specific order because you don't really have a choice in the matter. Now, the linearity varies. For instance, there are some like Mount Hyjal where you fight all 5 bosses in exactly the same order. There are some like Black Temple where you will absolutely fight 3 bosses in the same order, then you can maybe change it around a bit, but then you fight more bosses in the same order. So, that's not a non-linear instance, that's just a slightly varied progression path through one instance. Not the same thing. Now, generally speaking, through all of these dungeons, you had, with very few exceptions, a progression path where the curve of difficulty went upwards. And that made perfect sense, of course. The logic being quite simple. You want to provide a reasonably long learning experience for everyone because that's the content you expect them to deal with for the next X number of months. So say AQ40. Or indeed anything. Anything like that. You look at a boss, followed by a boss which is harder, followed by a boss which is harder, followed by a boss which is harder, and there might be a little bit of variance because, you know, some difficulty is not necessarily completely objective. You can analyze the various mechanics of fights, and you can come to a conclusion of just how difficult a fight is based on those mechanics. But sometimes some guilds will find fights easier than others. In other words, a degree of subjectivity there. So you can't always argue that, yes, this boss is this difficulty, this boss is this difficulty. What you can do is have a look at the sort of general difficulty curve. And the reason that you don't have a bunch of bosses after a hard boss that are easy is because those bosses get crunched. Yeah, they get absolutely mauled in a very short period of time. Which means the amount of time that you've spent designing those bosses, creating the art assets and stuff like that, building the fight, was actually a waste. Because you might as well have created one hard boss, because it would have taken these guys longer to beat that one hard boss than it would to beat these 3 easy bosses. Blackwing Lair was an example of where they went wrong with this. And it's funny, because you look at the way Blackwing Lair was designed, and you think, actually, maybe the 3 Drakes, yeah? Flamegore, Ebonrock, and Firemaw, not in that order, of course. That's actually in reverse order. It's actually in reverse order of difficulty as well, I might add. Those bosses all looked exactly the same. They were like filler bosses, right? And it's like Blizzard actually knew that after you've beaten stuff like Razorgore and Veilstraz, you're going to be able to stomp these guys into the ground. They're free loot bosses. Now, loot pinatas, of course, serve a practical purpose. There are some bosses that could be classified as loot pinatas. Shade of Akama, prime example. Yeah? But generally speaking, they are the exceptions that prove the rule. Why? Because it's nice to sometimes offer a little bit of a break in the progression curve, in the difficulty curve. But if you look at Ulduar, I don't believe that you could sanely argue, from any kind of rational perspective, that it was a flat difficulty level. Yeah? You get your first major challenge in the form of XT002. From there, stuff does get harder. Iron Council is, in my opinion, harder than XT002. I'd say Kolaghan is about on the same difficulty level as XT002. About the same. Araya, slightly more difficult. I don't even know how you pronounce that. Then, of course, you've got the 4 Keepers, who, they're not the same difficulty level, but the order you do them in You know, you go from the easiest to the hardest. You'll generally do Hodir, then Freya, then Thorim, and then Mimiron, who are all in that order as far as I'm concerned difficulty. Now, if you go on the IRC channel or go on my blog, blueplease.blogspot.com, you'll see a line graph that I came up with that comes up with some subjective difficulty levels in comparison to the number of people that have actually defeated it. Now, what you can see there is a curve going upwards combined with a curve going downwards. And the curve going downwards is the number of people who've actually beaten that stuff. And I think what you will see is that, yes, absolutely, Ulduar does have a difficulty curve. Now, what's my point? What is the point that I'm coming to here? Well, the point is that when you look at Ulduar, and when we look back at Ulduar, having gone several raid instances in, I think what we will genuinely see is an instance that was very well designed in terms of the way that the difficulty gradually sloped upwards, and a properly equipped guild that was smart and had the dedication is entirely capable of beating Ulduar in a reasonable length of time. And they are not going to steamroll it. And the argument, the bizarre argument from some, and I'm going to use the word here, elitist raiders, is that Ulduar is somehow easy, is absolutely ridiculous, and that actually harms the cause. It throws a spanner into the works of trying to come up with reasonable content that is suitable for all and provides a reasonable challenge with reasonable rewards, which is, of course, in my opinion, what everyone should be asking for. And if you don't like it, and if you don't want that, then you're stupid, and you're ruining the damn game. I'll be back after this, folks. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast, An Archive of Blue Please. Music was removed due to copyright concerns. If you'd like to hear the music, tune in live on Fridays at 8 p.m. British Standard Time. That is 3 p.m. EST on WCRadio.com. You are tuned into Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit, and WCRadio.com. And if you are an iTunes listener, yes, we have a website. It has many wonderful things, including forums, shows, page downloads, all manner of cool stuff. WCRadio.com is the place that you need to check out. I know a lot of people are very fond of their iTunes and really, really like their iTunes, and to the point where they'll never visit the website. You know what, before iTunes even existed, we had a great website and did all of the podcasting and stuff from there. So, you know, you should go check it out. Have a look. It's very nicely designed. Designed by our very own Cadwallian, very talented man that he is. Now, I've got a little apology, I suppose, to make. And that's that there's not going to be a show next Friday. The reason for that is that I'm going to be at the Bloodstock Metal Festival down in Lichfield. And if any of the rest of you are going, I've had several emails from fans who will be there. And myself and Kiki will be there. Give me an email. Shoot one over. themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com. Let me know if you're going to the Bloodstock Festival. If you are, we'll meet up. Waiting for my custom flag. I've actually found stuff to make a 12-foot metal flagpole. And I've ordered a custom 6.5-foot WoW Radio flag, which has got a great design put together by Pride. Got a troll face with 2 Arcanite Reapers crossed behind it, and of course the words WoW Radio on it. If you are there, you will see that flag flying in the campsite. You should come and say hello, come and have a drink with us. It'll be great fun. So yeah, I won't be doing a show then. I will try and get out a podcast of some description, or I will reschedule the show for some time. And I can't do it Monday because I'm still going to be at the Metal Festival. Can't do it Tuesday because I've got a podcast to do there. So it's most likely that we'll have a Wednesday Massacre. Yes, indeed. Blue Please Wednesday Massacre. That'll be a lot of fun. We'll do it there. Yeah, so there you go. We'll make that a date for you. Wednesday the... what the hell is it? Wednesday, the 19th of August 2009 at the usual time of 8 o'clock BST. That's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard. That will be the Wednesday Blue Please Massacre, to replace the show that is not going to be on the Friday. Okay. Now, let's get along, shall we? Because I asked you to send some emails, and you, being the good little soldiers that you are, have obliged. So, I asked you to tell me about your patch 3.2 experiences so far. Because, you know what? I haven't had any. And won't have any until the faction change comes in. You know, it's very tempting to try and go back to the game, but I just can't see myself having any fun until I get into the sort of environment, the sort of mindset that I want to be in. So, let's hear what you have to say. And I've got a number of interesting emails from you. So, we'll talk about that. Patch 3.2, this one comes in from Matthew, and he says this. TB, I'm quite enjoying Patch 3.2 so far, but the best thing in my opinion is the free Tier 9 loot. Is this a troll? I believe that this is one of the best things to happen to raiding, because no longer can anyone claim that their failure is due to lack of gear. And those players like myself who play well but got screwed on gear are no longer at the full mercy of guild loot rules, bad RNG, and lack of drops. Yeah, but the patch changes didn't fix any of those things. Now, I understand the whole, oh yes, if they're fully kitted out in Tier 9, then yeah, they've got no excuse or no one but themselves to blame. Yeah, okay, that's fine, but is it the juice worth the squeeze? I don't believe it is. I also don't believe the whole, oh, we got screwed on RNG, blah, 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 so now we can do this. You could do that anyway. If you're raiding the appropriate level instances, you are getting the badges which allowed you to do that in the first place. Never did you hear on this show any objection whatsoever to offering a full set of Tier 9 for Emblems of Triumph. No, what you heard an objection to was giving Emblems of Triumph for a damn heroic daily. That's what you heard the objection to, because people who run heroic dailies, and exclusively heroic dailies, do not deserve Tier 9 for their efforts. No, they deserve what they get from the heroic dailies, which was heroic gear. Not Tier 9 level gear, which is like 4 tiers above what they're supposed to be wearing. Are you nuts? Don't be ridiculous. I have a feeling this was actually just sent in to infuriate me. It's possible. No, I don't agree with that at all. The badge changes suck. We talked about it earlier in the show. The stupid change. Yeah, they said they wanted to move away from the debacle of giving people gear that was vastly above their station. And I was okay with the badges up until now. The badge change system was great. Up until now, the badge system was supposed to help you avoid that bad RNG, avoid being at the full mercy of guild loot rules, avoid the lack of drops, like you just said, help fill in the gaps. So your guild has vast amounts of DKP being spent on the tier 8.5 chess piece. That's okay, because you can earn it by killing enough bosses in there anyway. You got issues with being able to make a belt, you know, the best in slot belt with the orbs. It's okay. Your guild's not giving you orbs. Okay, you can just buy them via using your badges. That was the whole point of the system. It wasn't to give you free epics. It was never to give you free epics. You earned those epics. You know, earning conquest badges before this ridiculous change was done by doing conquest level content. By conquering the content, in fact. By being valorous. By being heroic. And by triumphing over... Oh, I'll stop now, this is terrible. You get the idea. So yeah, you're talking out your arse. Next one. This is from Avitus, and he says this. Hello TB, as a dedicated PvPer since Vanilla WoW. Wow. Have you maybe thought about trying another game? There's loads of really good PvP games. Anyway, yeah, since Vanilla WoW, I'm surprised to see the current state of PvP in Wrath of the Lich King, especially in 3.2. Back in the day, you would actually have to play properly and know your stuff to kill another player. No, that's not true. I used to just spam Flame Strike in AV and get loads of kills. I didn't know anything. And it was indeed possible to take on multiple opponents, including them with healers who countered properly. However, since Wrath of the Lich King, healers are near impossible to counter, especially a healer together with a damage dealer. Well, a healer together with a healer doesn't really work out so well. I shall heal them to death! It'll take me about 5 hours. Start now. Also, since 3.2 with the resilience buff, it's making it even harder to counter and making protection paladins not only viable healers in PvP with infinite mana, RNG Mace Stun, and silence plus snare shield, but with 34k health and 10k flash of lights. They're probably the most bent class at the moment. Since I thought prop paladins were supposed to tank, not heal, what do you think about Blizzard making all classes capable of doing the same stuff? We're talking about class homogenization. This is not just patch 3.2. This has been happening for ages. Because people don't like having to make choices for some reason. I don't get it. It's like, either that or Blizzard just thinks that they don't like making choices. Like, oh, I chose to be a prot whatever. But now I want to do this. I want to be effective in damage, and I want to do this, and I want to do this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, so we made prot warriors do effective damage in PvP, and stuff like that. It's like, how does that make any sense? We made prot paladins effective healers in PvP. How does that make any sense? Well, the answer comes in the fact that the mechanics are so bloody simplistic that you just can't You just cannot do those kind of things in PvP. The roles in PvP are so small and so restrictive that you've got to let all the classes do everything. It's like every class has to have a crowd control, every class has got to have an area of effect, every class has got to have, well, the only thing they can't really do is blink and heal themselves all the time. You've got to actually have someone that's got to heal. But hey, we've expanded that to a bunch of other classes that are able to regenerate health in one way or another. So yeah, that's nothing to do with 3.2, honestly. It's another march in the road towards homogenization, and I can't stand it. And yes, I don't like it when I see yet another patch that does that, but it's not exclusive to patch 3.2. Another email here from Jonathan Spencer. I'd like to share my thoughts on the recent patch. There were a lot of changes to my class. Oh god, we're talking about Death Knights, aren't we? Yeah, so they nerfed Death Knights. Okay, do you see anyone else crying over the Death Knights? No. I feel for you. Don't get me wrong, I know that it sucks when your class gets nerfed, but really. You know, you got the most overpowered class in the game, it's going to take a couple of hits. Anyway, a bit of information about the XT bug. They actually introduced this at the start of the patch. As far as I'm concerned, this is XT's revenge for all of those nerfs. He was spawning, like, a ridiculous number of scrap bots, and like 50 bomb bots and 15 pummelers. Yes! That's the real XT002! You're not hardcore enough to manage the real XT002. Oh no! That was revealing the revenge of XT002. It's like, let me see if I can give you my best XT002 voice. You have nerfed me far too long! You have made me free epics, but no longer! Oh no! You evil toys that came from me! Oh no, I will destroy every last one of you! And then I will burn you atop a pyre! That would be nice. I would like to hear that. That would be like the hard mode. It's like, haha, I have tricked you! I am now uber hard! Death! Death upon XT002! Upon the world! It would be nice, wouldn't it? But no. Apparently, yeah, there was a crazy bug when they released it that was spawning hundreds upon hundreds of ads. That's the real version. Oh, yeah. That's the real version of that fight. That's how it was supposed to be. No, that's been fixed now. That's unfortunate. But yeah, yet another nerf to XT002. They had to buff it first, then they nerfed it straight away. Okay, another email here from Vati, level 80 Mage on RR Inc. Ravenhold EU, he says this. Hey TB, new raid. The normal mode seemed really easy. We got the boss down a second try, and we were a little down in the dumps. We found gear was better than Ulduar 25 in this dump. Oh well, hopefully they get harder. Well, they do a bit, but not by much. Yes, indeed, the first boss they've released drops better gear than Ulduar 25, and yet is infinitesimally easier. Not one! Not one!
Not one, but two Jormungandr worms!
And basically everyone's got an achievement now. Incidentally, I'm taking full credit for that achievement. I don't care if I came up with it first or not. It's mine! If BRK can get it going, I want a damn achievement. Now, Conquest badges from Heroics. In theory, I wasn't a big fan of this, so he says. But now it's live, I don't mind it at all. There's a shocker. As long as I know I earned my gear, I don't really mind how other players feel when they get their now out-of-date gear. I think of it more as previous season's PvP gear. The thing is, it's not out of date. That's the thing. It would be out of date if we got a full-sized raid instance that was going to make everything completely obsolete, but we don't, actually. The primary piece of raid content in patch 3.2, can you tell me what it is? I'm just trying to hear you through the internet. Hello? Internet? Are you in there? Well, you're going to answer, of course. Oh, well, it's the Crusaders Colosseum. Wrong. No, it isn't. The main piece of raid content in patch 3.2 is exactly the same as the main piece of raid content in 3.1. It's Ulduar. Why? Have you been to the Crusaders Colosseum yet? It's 5 minutes! That's all it is, because they only release one boss, and even when you beat all of them, it's like 5 or 6 bosses, and no trash. You're going to be able to beat this instance in an hour or less. Do not tell me that is the main piece of raid content. It isn't. Ulduar is the main piece of raid content. That means that Ulduar gear is still the standard. That's the standard, that's the par. That's the gear that it was designed to be beaten in. And that's the gear that it has been beaten in completely. So in reality, no, they're not getting outdated gear. It's just that the gear you get from the Colosseum is ahead of its time. And indeed, by the looks of it, you're not even going to need that gear to beat the encounters in there, which makes very little sense whatsoever. So there's my argument there. Also, Living Bomb, 7.1k DPS and Colligan and Mimiron. Seed of Corruption can go suck itself. Yes, I enjoy being the vastly overpowered AoE class again. It's always nice. And last but not least, his comments on the Isle of Conquest. One of the best battlegrounds around. It needs a few tweaks. The hangar needs to be in a better place to capture. And maybe lower the damage done by C4 bombs. Otherwise, pretty solid. Yeah, that was the big feature for the patch to me. I don't know why they hyped up the Colosseum so much when it was obvious to anyone with a blinking brain cell that was going to be the big piece of content. Yeah, I'm okay with them introducing a big piece of good PvP content. I like Battlegrounds. Battlegrounds are good. Good design there. I'm looking forward to some fun. Inevitably, the players are going to be ruining it, just like they did AV. Oh my god, Zerg, no organization, no command whatsoever, no strategy. Just throw all that out the window, because you got people playing WoW. If it was any other game, then maybe... no, I'm kidding myself. No, if you've ever played Battlefield 2, you'll know for a fact that strategy does not come into it. Quick, guys, rush the glaive. Quick, guys, rush the plane. Same difference. It's so depressing. Now, I'm not going to read that, because that's a wall of text. That's quite silly. Last, but by no means least, from Alios, or whatever the hell his name is, 80 Prot Warrior on Sentinels US, currently playing the Isle of Conquest. I haven't been playing much WoW lately, as the only thing for me to do has been to grind rep, or scour for achievements. My raiding guild has been limping for a while, so I haven't been in Old WoW for a month now. When 3.2 hit, I expect myself to be dragged back into WoW, as I'm prone to do every patch. After getting some of the new bells, whistles, and quests out of the way, I found a group to run the heroic and normal versions of the new 5-man. Initially, I was having fun. While I felt the jousting portion was forced on me, yes, more vehicle fights, I like just running in, dealing with interesting boss fights and not having to worry about trash. It felt similar to an old Mega Man game where you fought all the robot bosses in one of the later stages, and those were one of my favourite things to do. I think anyone would agree that the boss fights are one of, if not the key draws, of an instance or raid. After enjoying myself, I immediately got disgusted when I found myself replacing a Nax 25 trinket, the Rune of Repulsion, with a trinket from a normal mode 5-man TOC, called the Black Heart, aiming every scrubby player LFG 24/7 to farm the epics in this new 15-minute instance has made it very difficult for me to give PvE an honest look. It's disgusting and makes my past achievements in Nax and Wrath feel like a joke. Good job, Blizzard. Good job. Yeah, 15-minute instance? Are you kidding? I know it's a novelty instance with the whole, oh, you get to fight Hogger again. Ha ha ha. We are taken in by the smoke and mirrors of this amazing gimmick. No, we aren't. We see it as a really easy instance that gives away way too many epics for way too little effort. Indeed, in fact, that instance symbolised the entire problem with this patch. Effort? No, we subscribe. We don't require that. My name is TotalBiscuit. You're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio. When we come back, we'll do the illusion of choice and we shall end the show. In the meantime, however, I'm going to play some metal, because everyone loves the metal. And if you don't love the metal, then I would ask you why exactly you're listening to this show. I've got some Equilibrium. It's Prologue, Auf, Erden. Whatever the hell that means. You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Please. Music was removed due to copyright concerns. If you'd like to hear the music, tune in live on Fridays at 8 p.m. British Standard Time. That is 3 p.m. EST on WCRadio.com. So yeah, I'm pretty quiet on Vent, you know? Kinda laid back. Oh my god, you noobs! DPS the ends! I like to chill out, kick back, relax, raid with my friends. No worries, no stress. How is that even possible? Are you 7 different shades of stupid? Move out of the fire! It's important to make sure my orders come through loud and clear. I'm a bit, well, shy. I'm not particularly loud or anything. My last event server was really poor quality. Tank it, for heaven's sakes! Tank it! How can you be so monumentally freaking terrible? Well, I discovered UGT Ventrilo servers. Amazing quality, great prices, and they're so reliable. It was perfect in every way. I mean, I was a pretty calm guy before, and now I've got even less reasons to worry. Why? Why do I raid with you people? Why not get one of your own? UGTservers.com. That's UGTservers.com. You'll be glad that you did. It's really helped me find my zen, you know? You're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. It is the illusion of choice! The question is it really? Perhaps it's an illusion of choice. It is possible. In this case, it is actually an illusion of choice, because you've all come up with some really bad topics. Like, terrible topics. I mean, God! Absolutely abysmal. Now, there is one here that I suppose I could have a look at, but I'll be honest, it doesn't really make a massive amount of sense. It's from J-Man MC, and he says this. How do you feel about Blizzard coming out with new content, but then changing the old content to be much harder than forcing us to relearn the old bosses? When did that ever happen? just out of interest. Because I don't remember a single occurrence. So I suppose I'd have feelings about it if it, ever happened. Which it doesn't, and never has, at least as far as I'm aware. I don't recall ever having to relearn a boss or whatever. The only time it's ever happened... Actually, Ulduar's a good example. When Ulduar first came out, the trash for XC002 didn't work. Which meant that you could just sail straight into XD002 and not have to worry about any trash whatsoever. Now, of course, when the trash came up, and the trash was initially quite hard, it gave us pause, because we had to relearn part of the instance. I.e., we had to learn that we couldn't just run in there, because we'd die. And then they nerfed that a few times and made it an absolute joke so you could AoE it, because Lord knows, providing trash that you can't AoE is an incredibly new concept and scares people. But no, I don't remember any other occurrences of that honestly happening, so I don't know if I can really give you an answer for that. So you know what? I'm going to read some more emails on this subject. You've got about 10 minutes or so to submit all your emails about 3.2. I'll read a couple more, then I'll go and finish the show off with some shout-outs. Yes, indeed. Now, here's one from Calvin Hobbs, and he says this. Hey, TB, I know that you haven't been a part of 3.2 yet, and I found something interesting the other day. I hit the achievement. Yes, we know the not one but two Jawmanga Worms achievement. Yes, we know about that one. You gotta bear in mind that Blizzard kind of seeded the joke and seeded the meme, and some of us idiots decided to pick up on it. So that's really what ended up happening. It's fun nonetheless. I love the Jawmanga Worms thing. I think it's awesome. One of these days I'm gonna actually get someone to properly sing that song. A few weeks ago, you might be aware if you listen to the show that we did a song called Jawmanga Worms. And it was a parody of Ozzy Osbourne's Bark of the Moon. Now, if any of you have ever sung Ozzy Osbourne, I think you can sing it. Drop me an email, themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com. So I'll tell you who can't sing it, me. I can't sing Ozzy Osbourne for the life of me. I sound terrible. Absolutely abysmal, but it's got great lyrics, and I've got a backing track. So, if you're willing to give it a shot, you get it played on the show, email themurloc@gmail.com. Who knows, there might be a mystery prize. Oh, yes. Mystery prizes are always good. And while I'm on the subject of cool stuff that's hopefully going to be happening relatively soon, you remember a little while ago I went on Rawcast to do a guest spot. Well, I'll be doing another guest spot around BlizzCon, and I'll be competing against Terpster for the Rawcast quiz that they blatantly ripped off us. Yes, we came up with the idea for a quiz show, Rawcast stole it. Their quiz isn't as good as our quiz, but now we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'll be competing against Terpster for prizes and mostly EP. It is mostly EP, let's admit it. We don't really care what prizes are involved. It's all going to be about the EP. All I can say is I hope he's doing his research. It would be very unpleasant if he was pounded into the ground, wouldn't it? That's what he gets for playing a gnome. If he didn't want to be pounded into the ground, he should have played a proper race, like, Troll. No one can pound a troll into the ground, because they're much taller than everyone else. And we're so scrawny that we have the ability to go invisible by turning sideways. It's awesome. Now, that wasn't all, however. I'll be going on another cast, actually. You may have heard of a place called Virgin Worlds. And Virgin Worlds is a podcast hub for certain podcasts about MMOs. They've got a couple of podcasts. They've got stuff about EVE, stuff about Warhammer, got a Lord of the Rings one on there, a couple of general ones. And one they've got at the moment is, oddly enough, run by two nuns. Yes, I found this rather intriguing. Two nuns came up with this. I don't know why. It is quite amusing. But apparently they decided they wanted to do a podcast. So they sent me an invitation to be on the show, which goes by the name of No Prisoners, No Mercy, which is a MMO podcast show thing, which will be airing at some point. I don't have a specific air date for this yet, but all I know is I'm recording it tomorrow with them. So I will post that on the front page on WCRadio.com, so keep your eyes peeled for me plus 2 nuns, which is probably some kind of fantasy that I would imagine some of you sick freaks kind of have in mind. I don't know, we run the gamut on WoW Radio when it comes to our audience members. I know that we've got several furries listening right now. Now, I'm not going to mention the fact that I would like all furries to be incinerated. No, I'm not going to mention that at all. But, you know, each to their own. Just incinerate all the furries. Now, it's a free source of energy for the world. It's perfect. Right. Emails. A couple of last emails, then we'll finish the show. As you may have managed to work out of the show, I've not been in the best of sorts. I'm very, very tired after a very long week. So I do apologise if I'm not up to my usual standard. I'm hoping to get back into WoW soon and actually get passionate about the game again. I imagine something's going to either infuriate me or excite me in some way over the next couple of weeks, especially with BlizzCon on its way. Oh, yes. So, I'm going to read one more email, I'm going to finish the show off. So, here we go. It's from Bjorn Schultz, also known as Thorin, from Argent Dawn. And he made some comment that he claimed to be ironic. Now, of course, the irony being that, no, it was not ironic at all. He says this: some thoughts on the state of patch 3.2. Blizzard has already announced that this will be the second to last raid instance of Wrath of the Lich King. This means that this is in effect the same as Black Temple and AQ40 progress-wise. Now, when people complained about Naxxramas being too easy, Blizzard replied with the excuse that it was the first raid instance, and that later on we would get proper raids. So why on earth is the new raid actually easier than the earlier bosses of Ulduar? I'm sorry, but you should never, ever, ever be able to go into a Tier 9 raid instance after 1 hour of tries without having read any strats whatsoever down the boss, or rather 3 of them. Overall, this patch can be summed up as why? Pretty much all it feels is too easy and too pointless and too repetitive. The daily quests are unimaginative, the sets are horrible, at least for Shaman, the heroic 5-man is easier than the current 5-mans, yet yields better gear. Never mind the gear in terms of the mechanics employed, most of it is tank and spank. Sorry, I've done jousting for the past, well, too long, for it to be fun again without a proper twist. They then try and justify the entire thing throughout the content, but the more they try to make it make sense lore-wise, the more you realise that there isn't any sense to be made. While you may think this doesn't matter, part of what makes a good experience is the feeling that what you're doing is actually making sense. Going through any of the vanilla instances felt like it had a purpose to it, yet in the arena it's impossible to shake the ridiculousness of the whole thing. So why on earth is the 25-man gear now completely identical to look at the 10-man? Not 1 but 2 Jawmanga worms! Sums up the PvE part of this patch. It feels weak, bad, too easy, unfinished and lazy. One good thing is the new battleground, Isle of Conquest. It's my opinion the best battleground we have had after the death of AV. It feels epic, it's varied, and more important, it's fun, and actually results in the sides fighting each other. But since battlegrounds don't offer any progression or way to improve the character, it still begets the question, why go there? Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I don't find it bizarre that the main piece of content that you bring into your new patch actually has no part in the progression path whatsoever. And that is really odd. I know you can buy some of the really old season gear with honor points, but there is really no progression at all. I mean, without the old honor system being in place, what is there to do? I mean, all the progression's been shifted over to arenas, so when you bring in a new piece of content like that makes the arenas look less popular, and then you realise, well, it's not actually a part of the progression path. I can't really progress in this at all, it's just here to muck around in. It's a little bit disconcerting. I'm not going to dispute that. I would like to see Battlegrounds part of some proper progression path. As to how? Well, you know what, Blizz, go and do what you do best, and that's look at other games and steal some good ideas. Not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying you've got a big part of your game that is, quite frankly, stagnant. Go fix it. My name is TotalBiscuit, you've been listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio. I am out of here after a few quick shout-outs, so email themurloc@gmail.com, that is themurloc@gmail.com. Alternatively, send me a PM on IRC. IRC.MMOIRC.com, #pound WoW Radio, or click the chat button on the top of the screen on WCRadio.com. Last, but by no means least, you can tweet me by typing @TotalBiscuit, that is the @ TotalBiscuit, and send it over there. 150 or so characters or less. Yes, indeed. So, I do have a shout-out that was actually sent in, which I would love to do, except for the fact that my mouse is broken. What? Why? Why would you do this? Blinking computer. Right, here. Plug it back in. There! Works perfectly. Excellent. For the next 5 minutes before it breaks again. So I do have a shout-out that was sent in quite a while ago. It's by a guy who's going to the Bloodstock Festival. And he says this: could myself and my friend get a shout-out on today's show for dressing up as the Knights of Ni for the Bloodstock Festival? I'm making my giant flag today that says on one side, we are the keepers of the sacred words, and on the other side, Ni! I'm planning on throwing my helmet on stage when Churasasa are on. That's from John and Chris. Yes, you can. I look forward to drinking mead and eating meat, listening to metal at Bloodstock with you next weekend. Shall be awesome. A shout out to me for leveling my characters through PvP. It is the win. That's from Ragavale from Doomhammer EU. Something I may consider doing at some point. Can I get a shout out to the Ironclad Regiment on Karak Norn? It's part of the Noble Brotherhood Guild Alliance. Wah! Whatever that means. That's from Limus. Shout out to Torendoza on Markovin of Shandras US. Can I get a shout out to my mum who's listening to this because I'm blasting it from my room, saying this guy needs some vodka to chill out. Where's the fun in that? Why would you want to dull the senses? Why not get angry about something? Why not get passionate about something? I would say something about showing your mum some passion and all, but somehow I don't think she's gonna go for that. Shout out to Felinaria, Silverhand US, for finally finishing a complete show at work. Congratulations. A shout out to Sylphia on Feathermoon US. You're an awesome druid tank, no matter who says otherwise. That's from Zarya, obviously a fanboy there. Could I get a shout out to my wife, who is on the other side of the country doing the military thing, and my guild, Anima. Let's kill Yogg faster. That's from Celind. Yes, you can. A shout out to Ace of Spade on Zenadar EU for whining, because my friend put a train on the floor while waiting for buffs. She almost got kicked from the guild. You suck. Can I get a shout out to the Wrath Guild on Dragonblight EU from Steffi, and an In the Mountains drop in, if you please. What? In the mountains?
In the mountains.
No, you may not. Can I get a shout out to Hodir for his trash Winter Jawmanga Worms? Yes, not 2 but 20 Jawmanga Worms. Can I get a shout out to Mopman for being an awesome help on the WoW Radio desktop notifier? Yes, you can, and you should check out the WoW Radio forums. There's a handy little program that tells you when your shows are going to be on air. Very helpful. Check out general discussion. Look for the WoW Radio notifier. Ladies and gents, I'll do a couple more of a Twitter, and then that will, as they say, be that. Shout out to my guild Blood Oath on Hydraxis US from Nida. And a shout out to Schlemo for getting full epics in 2 days from the new patch. You are everything that's wrong with WoW! Zen calm, folks. Zen calm. I'm done. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, TotalBiscuit. I won't be on next week. I'll be doing it on the Wednesday after the fact, because I'll be at Bloodstock. We're doing the Wednesday Blue Please Massacre. It shall be great fun. Check out the rest of our shows on WCRadio.com. You'll be glad that you did, because they are all fantastic. Rate and review us using iTunes, and I will be back on Tuesday with my show Gaming the System. If you like your games, you like your video games, and your gaming videos, stuff like that, myself and Swag will be taking you through the world of video games on Tuesday at 7 p.m. British Standard Time. It's 2 p.m. EST on WCRadio.com. Check out our sponsors, Buff.net, UGT Servers, and Shoutcast Radio on our website, WCRadio.com. Thank you ever so much for listening. As always, you are a fantastic audience, except for the guys that aren't. You all suck. Those little guys. The little portion. They suck. The rest of you are great. I'll leave you to battle amongst yourselves as to which of you suck and which of you don't. I'm gone. That was Blue Please. I am TotalBiscuit. I was TotalBiscuit, and I will continue to be TotalBiscuit. Good night. You have been listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Please, a show that airs exclusively on WCRadio.com on Fridays at 8 p.m. British Standard Time. That's 3 p.m. EST. You can check out our archives on our website at WCRadio.com and subscribe to our RSS feeds. Don't forget to rate and review us using iTunes, and if you wish to leave constructive criticism,